Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Trumpet Daily. What a week this has already been for radical Islam. Over the weekend, of course, the United States released 5 high-ranking Taliban leaders in exchange for an American prisoner of war that had deserted his post. Videos showing the 5 terrorists arriving in Qatar display a triumphant party greeting them with no American presence in sight. Meanwhile, in the West Bank, yesterday, Palestinian Authority leader Mahmoud Abbas swore in members of the new unity government. The 17-minister government is comprised both of Fatah and Hamas members. 5 of the ministers are actually from the Gaza Strip. Today, with the formation of a national consensus government, we announce the end of a Palestinian division that has greatly damaged our national case. That's what Abbas said at that swearing-in ceremony. He continued, "The black page in the history of the Palestinians has been turned forever, and we will not allow it to come back." And so Hamas, which has long been labeled a terrorist organization by the U.S. government, is now working alongside the Palestinian Authority. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called on world leaders not to recognize the newly formed Palestinian government. Hamas is a terrorist organization, he said, that calls for Israel's destruction, and the international community must not embrace it. He later said that would not bolster peace, it would strengthen terror. And yet, within hours of that new government forming, the United States of America announced that it was willing to work with the new Palestinian government.
This gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world.
And he said unto me, you must prophesy again.
U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry spoke with Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday, and after the new government there with the Palestinians was formed, and basically said the United States intends to work with this new unity government, even though it has enlisted the support of Hamas. It's an amazing development, really, and it's just astounding to see how fast these decisions are made that adversely affect so many people. I want to take you to the press briefing at the State Department yesterday. This is spokesperson Jen Psaki responding to a question about the new Palestinian unity government.
Well, at this point, it appears that President Abbas has formed an interim technocratic government that does not include ministers affiliated with Hamas. Moving forward, we will be judging this government by its actions. Based on what we know now, we intend to work with this government, but we'll be watching closely to ensure that it upholds the principles that President Abbas reiterated today.
One follow-up on this. When you say based on what we know now, we intend to work with this government, does that mean that based on what you know now, you intend to continue dispersing U.S. foreign assistance to the Palestinian Authority and this government?
It does, but we will continue to evaluate the composition and policies of the new government and calibrate our approach accordingly.
So you can see, particularly with the first comment that she made, a carefully worded, scripted response, and then the follow-up answer to that question said that the United States would not only continue working with this new government, but would also continue supporting, sending over hundreds of millions of dollars in aid to this government that now includes Hamas, a terrorist organization, according to that very same department, the State Department. Pretty amazing, and she justifies it, or the U.S. government justifies it by saying that, well, this government's actually being run by technocrats, men in suits, I guess, not actual Hamas members or not actual individuals associated with Hamas. as if Hamas is somehow not calling the shots or the ones behind those technocrats. You might remember a few months back, I think it was in the fall last year, we had Congressman Langford here, the congressman from the Central District of Oklahoma, and he talked about how the Obama administration really did highly praise and value leadership by technocrats, a small cluster of individuals in the suits that know better than the masses. It's interesting to me that when Abbas came out and described this unity government, that he used that term, technocrats, which is a popular term within the Obama administration. Maybe Abbas knew what he was doing. This is one of the quotes about the new government from Abbas himself. This is a technocrat government. It has nothing to do with Fatah, Hamas, or any factions. Nothing, you understand. This is from Abbas, who's in the 9th year of his 4-year term, not exactly the most legitimate government in the world. His term expired 5 years ago, and he's continued right on. He's resisted any attempt to make peace with Israel, even one that included basically having all the territory in the West Bank with a few minor adjustments. And now he's formed an alliance with Hamas that forcefully kicked Fatah out of Gaza back in 2007, throwing Fatah members off of roofs and things. A brutal takeover. But yet he says it's a technocrat government, so of course the United States government says, well, okay, then I guess we can work with it. Pretty amazing. This is a commentary piece. Jonathan Tobin, he says, in recognizing the fig leaf of a technocrat government that's meant to distract the world from the reality that Hamas is now in full partnership with Abbas, the Obama administration may think it has put Israel's government, which publicly called for the world not to recognize the Palestinian coalition, into a corner, but by discarding its own principles about recognizing unrepentant terror groups, Obama has done more than betrayed Israel. He has betrayed the cause of peace. See, this affects more than just one little nation. It's making the entire world more unstable. Continues here, it would be a mistake to waste much time debating whether the cabinet Abbas has presented to the world is not really affiliated with Hamas. The people he has appointed are nothing but stand-ins for the real power brokers in Palestinian politics. The leaders of Fatah, who lorded over those portions of the West Bank under the sway of the PA, and the Hamas chieftains, it says, who have ruled Gaza with an iron fist since the 2007 coup in which they seized power there. I mean, they've been ruling with an iron fist for 7 years. And now this breach between Hamas and Fatah has been healed. This can't be good for Israel when it looks and sees the European Union, the United States, many in the West saying, well, okay, I guess we can give them a chance. As long as they're just technocrats, we might as well give them a chance. But a lot of people, commentators in particular, can see what's happening here. Certainly Israel can. They know what's happening here. Many in the world can see it. But a lot of very prominent leaders also are blind to what's really happening. And so Fatah and Hamas will now continue. You heard it yourself from that spokesperson, Ms. Psaki. I mean, she said, yes, it does mean we're going to continue sending in the financial support, hundreds of millions of dollars of support coming in from the West that goes now not just to the PA and Fatah, not just to Abbas, but it goes to the leaders in Gaza as well. It goes to Hamas, which has been firing rockets at Israel for these 7 years. This is another quote here from the Times of Israel just yesterday. It says, Jerusalem on Monday night slammed the United States for announcing that it will work with the new Palestinian Unity government sworn in Monday. In strikingly bitter comments, officials said that rather than cooperating with the government backed by a terror group, Washington ought to be urging Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas to disband his pact with Hamas and resume peace negotiations with Israel. We are deeply disappointed by the comments of the State Department regarding working with the Palestinian Unity Government. This Palestinian government is a government backed by Hamas, it says, which is a terror organization committed to Israel's destruction. Israeli government officials pointed this out. It says, if the U.S. administration wanted to advance peace, it should be calling on Abbas to end his pact with Hamas and return to peace talks with Israel, they added. Instead, it is enabling Abbas to believe that it is acceptable to form a government with a terrorist organization. I talked to you yesterday about all this that's exploded regarding the prisoner swap and what the rest of the world must be thinking, or the message that it sends to other nations. Think about the message, as this article points out here, that this sends to Abbas. I mean, he's been, ever since the unity or reaching out to Hamas happened a couple months ago, he's been planning, he's been trying to figure out how he can sell this to the United States, using terms like technocrats, in order to win over our support. And then, as I say, the government's formed, warnings are issued all along by Secretary Kerry and others. Now, don't join with Hamas, don't do this. Then it happens, and then there's the United States. Okay, well, I guess we'll give it a shot. I guess we'll give it a try. This is, I mean, you read what the Israeli government said in response from that article. This is what the Prime Minister himself said in response to the U.S. quickly showing its support for the unity government.
I'm deeply troubled by the announcement that the United States will work with the Palestinian government backed by Hamas. Hamas is a brutal terrorist organization. It's recognized as such by the State Department. Hamas has murdered countless innocent civilians, including Americans. Hamas calls for the killing of Jews and for the destruction of the State of Israel. So all those who genuinely seek peace must reject President Abbas's embrace of Hamas. And most especially, I think the United States must make it absolutely clear to the Palestinian president that his pact with Hamas, the terrorist organization that seeks Israel's liquidation, is simply unacceptable.
He's pleading for the United States to say something like that this is unacceptable. He started his comment there by saying that he was deeply troubled by the announcement of the U.S. saying it intended to work with this new government. I mean, Israel is shocked at what's been happening. I mean, it's been shocked about a number of other things over the last several years as well. But this is a massive setback for Israel, and it represents a huge victory for Israel's enemies, for radical Islam. Let's look at Zechariah 11, just a verse here that we've used or referred to quite often over the years. Zechariah 11 and verse 14. If you've followed us for very long, you know that we've been talking about this relationship between America and Israel unraveling, and it certainly is unraveling. I'll show you an article here right at the end talking about, listing off, in fact, the many different ways that the United States has stabbed Israel in the back. This is Zechariah 11 and verse 14. It says, "Then I cut asunder mine other staff, even bands, that I might break the brotherhood," it says, "that I might break the brotherhood between Judah and Israel." The end-time nations of Israel, primarily being, in prophecy that is, primarily being the United States and Britain. And Judah in the Bible, of course, refers to the little nation of Israel in the Middle East today. And God talks about these two, Judah and Judah's brothers in America and Britain, those bands between the two being broken. There's other prophecies that talk about the pride of our power being broken. And who can deny that that's happening? When you look at the events of, as I said at the top of the program, just this week, and we're not even halfway through the week yet, as the United States of America is taking one hit after another And because of all this news with Sergeant Bergdahl, I mean, you haven't even really seen anything about this new unity government that brings Hamas into the fold and is now recognized and will be worked with and will be funded by the United States. U.S. taxpayers will be paying for this. That's a pretty, I mean, that's a significant development, any way that you look at it. Now, getting back to this severing of ties between the U.S. and little Israel, there's another prophecy. I read the verse to you actually yesterday, Hosea 5 and verse 13, which talks about little Israel going to Germany eventually, reaching out to Germany. Now, right now, the EU, I mean, this big conglomerate over there, it's pretty much endorsing this unity government as well. But we've talked to you a lot before about how that's going to change that configuration and how Germany's going to emerge, a strong man's going to emerge, and Israel's going to reach out to that individual, to Germany, for help. That's a big mistake, but I suppose we'll have to leave that for another program. This is that article I was talking to you about. This is also from the Times of Israel. 12 ways the U.S. administration has failed its ally, Israel. We have a few quotes on the board here for you. It says, mere hours after Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas swore in a government backed by the Islamic extremist Hamas group, the U.S. this is within hours, it notes, the U.S. State Department legitimized the arrangement, declaring that it would work with the new government because, here's why, because it does not include members affiliated with Hamas. Now, do you believe that? That's the reason. The U.S. is behind it. The U.S. is supporting it because it doesn't include members affiliated with Hamas. Hamas, I guess, has disappeared. Hamas is no longer controlling the Gaza Strip with an iron fist, supposedly. It's crazy reasoning, as we know. What was saddest about Washington's insistence on accepting Abbas's paper-thin veneer over his government's new nature, his technocrat ministers were all approved by Hamas. They were all approved by Hamas. Is that it represents only the Obama administration's latest abrogation of leadership, logic, and leverage at Israel's expense. Rather than rushing to embrace a Palestinian government in which an unreformed Hamas is a central component, what was to stop the U.S. conditioning its acceptance on a reform of Hamas? I mean, why wouldn't the U.S. at least consider this? Well, okay, we'll back it if this happens. We'll lend our support if this happens. We'll send in our aid if this happens. None of that happened. It goes on and says, what was to stop Washington saying that it would be happy to work with Abbas's new government the moment its Hamas backers recognized Israel, accepted previous agreements, and renounced terrorism? That's not a particularly high bar, it says. What was to stop the U.S. making such a demand, one of tremendous importance to its ally Israel? Only its incomprehensible reluctance to do so. People can't explain it. They can't understand it. They're dumbfounded at what's happening. Even the simplest of requests weren't put forward. No negotiation here. Then the negotiations yesterday or over the weekend that led to 5 terrorists being released. I mean, I guess that's the outcome of that negotiation. You look at the United States, everywhere that you look, I mean, little nations, big nations, anywhere in between. Putin, you go right down the list. Look at how they're taking advantage of the U.S. weakness. It's happening over and over again. I don't have it on the board. Somebody just handed this to me before coming up here for the taping. This is from the Jerusalem Post today. Hamas arms program speeding ahead. Hamas. Judging by these comments coming from America today or yesterday, it's as if Hamas no longer exists. But the reality on the ground is they're speeding up their arms program. This is from the Post. Hamas's weapons production program in Gaza is moving ahead at full speed, with local rocket production centers churning out thousands of projectiles, according to Israeli security evaluations. And it goes on and talks about how it doesn't even need the support financially from Iran like it used to, because it has so much of its own weapons-making facilities. And how much easier is it going to be with money just streaming into the West Bank and now Gaza? Do you suppose Abbas or those technocrats are going to withhold funds that come from the United States? Do you suppose they're going to withhold those funds and make sure that they don't get to those actually making and firing the rockets? It's as if some of our leaders are living in a fantasy world. It's no wonder Israel is up in arms. It's no wonder they're crying aloud. But none of their allies seem to be listening. This is our booklet, The King of the South, that I want you to go to the website to get. Actually, there's a video here I'll talk to you about in just a second. But this particular booklet, The King of the South, it talks, I haven't even really addressed Iran here, except for right here at the very end. The head of the snake, the number one state sponsor of terrorism. And this little booklet pretty much lays out all the prophecies that involve the Middle East and even the United States, really. You can call the number on your screen there to order your free copy today. We'll have our operators send it out to you right away. Or you can go to thetrumpet.com to order your copy online. I just want to refer you, though, to this video from a couple of months ago, what President Obama really thinks about Israel. It was one of our Trumpet Daily productions, and it was posted on March the 7th. You can see it at thetrumpet.com if you search for that title, What President Obama Really Thinks About Israel. Or you can go and look at the Trumpet Daily YouTube channel. This is one of the most viewed videos that we've produced. So I'd encourage you to go back and look at that video from a couple of months ago. And then also, don't forget about ordering your free copy of The King of the South. Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next time on the Trumpet Daily.